ever actually count the bodies in the Bible? Pop culture tells us one thing, but forensic scriptural analysis reveals a terrifying numerical asymmetry. Today, we run a data audit on the ultimate cosmic rivals. Are we worshipping the ultimate creator or the Bible's most prolific exterminator? Grab your calculator. The results might make you very uncomfortable.
Welcome back to the Sanctuary Studio, everyone. Today, Ramanuja and I are tackling one of the most controversial, data-driven textual analyses of biblical scripture. We are calculating the empirical body count of God versus Satan as recorded directly in the biblical text. This isn't about theological bias, it is a forensic look at the numbers. Who is responsible for more casualties, according to the literal script, when you tally the specific documented killings in the Old Testament? The contrast is staggering. Forensic scriptural compilations reveal a massive asymmetry in the numbers. While one figure is traditionally associated with absolute destruction, the literal script tells a very different story when we count the victims of divine wrath versus diabolical action. Let us open the ledgers and look at the raw data.
Indeed, Clara. As a scholar who has analyzed ancient texts for over a century, I approach this strictly as a comparative scriptural audit. According to the literal text of the Bible, the number of people explicitly killed by God reaches into the millions when counting both specific tallies and demographic estimates. In stark contrast, the number of casualties directly and exclusively attributed to Satan can be counted on two hands. This data-driven paradox presents a profound philosophical challenge. In ancient Near Eastern literature, supreme deities often wielded absolute destructive power over life and death, as an expression of sovereign justice and cosmic order. To understand these numbers without bias, we must examine the specific scriptural events where these casualties occurred, analyzing them through a purely textual and historical lens.
The literal scriptural audit reveals that the number of explicitly named or numbered individuals killed by God in the Bible sits at approximately 2.8 million. However, this number only includes events where the text provides a specific census. When adding massive demographic events where no specific count is listed, such as the global flood, Sodom and Gomorrah, and the firstborn of Egypt, the calculated total rises to an estimated 25 million casualties. Let's break down where these staggering numbers actually come from. The single largest demographic event is, of course, the Noahic Deluge in Genesis. While the text doesn't provide a census, modern population models' estimation for the early Bronze Age suggests millions were erased. Beyond the flood, the specific tallies in the text are remarkably precise, especially during the Exodus and the wandering in the wilderness. For instance, in Numbers chapter 16, a rebellion led by Korah results in the earth opening up, followed by a plague that kills exactly 14,700 people. In Numbers 25, another plague triggered by heresy claims 24,000 lives. These aren't vague approximations. The scriptural writers were keeping meticulous logs of life and death, attributing each mass casualty directly to divine intervention and judgment.
Another major statistical block occurs during the reign of King David. In 2 Samuel chapter 24, David conducts an unauthorized military census of Israel. The script states that this act of hubris displeases the divine order, resulting in a severe 3-day pestilence. The text notes with mathematical precision that from Dan to Beersheba, exactly 70,000 men died from the outbreak before the angel's hand was stayed. To an observer of ancient governance, these events reflect a specific cosmic paradigm, where the king's moral alignment directly dictated the biological survival of the population. Mass casualties were understood as immediate systemic corrections to restore cosmic equilibrium. The scriptural text does not hide these numbers. It elevates them as structural proof of absolute sovereignty over the nation's life cycle. In 2 Kings chapter 19, the script records one of the most massive single-night military interventions in ancient history. As the Assyrian army under Sennacherib surrounds Jerusalem, the text states that the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. By dawn, an entire imperial army was transformed into silent, lifeless corpses, preserved in the historical memory of the Levant.
Now, let's flip the ledger and examine the literal scriptural count for Satan. This is where the data gets truly surprising for most readers. Throughout the entire biblical canon, from Genesis to Revelation, there is only one specific event where Satan is explicitly recorded as killing human beings. That event is found in the prologue of the book of Job. And even there, it requires close textual analysis. In Job chapter 1, during a celestial assembly, a wager is made regarding Job's fidelity. Satan is granted permission to test Job, but with strict behavioral boundaries. A series of disasters follow. A great wind collapses a house, killing Job's 7 sons and 3 daughters. That is a specific tally of exactly 10 people. And structurally, it occurred only after explicit permission was granted from God.
This textual detail reveals the true linguistic and functional role of the adversary, or the Ha-Satan, in the oldest layers of the Hebrew script. He is not presented as an independent equal dark deity, ruling an opposing kingdom. Rather, he functions as a prosecuting attorney or an adversarial agent within the Supreme Court. He cannot alter terrestrial biology or kinetic weather systems without a warrant. Therefore, the statistical asymmetry is an accurate reflection of the text's underlying theology. In strict monotheism, all causal force, both creative and destructive, must ultimately trace back to the singular source of authority. To attribute mass casualties to an independent evil force would undermine the absolute sovereignty that ancient scribes sought to establish throughout the prophetic narrative.
The book of Job describes the destructive mechanism as a great wind rushing from the wilderness, striking the 4 corners of the house where the children feasted. The text frames this catastrophe through the lens of ancient nomadic tragedy. A sudden, localized atmospheric shockwave that collapsed the mud brick and timber structure in seconds, leaving behind an isolated ruin that served as the crucible for an epic philosophical debate. So why does modern popular culture have this completely reversed? Why do most people assume Satan is the primary source of death in the text? To understand this disconnect, we have to look at how theology evolved between the completion of the Old Testament and the writing of the New Testament, heavily influenced by intertestamental apocrypha, like the Book of Enoch, which introduced a more dualistic cosmic battle. In the later texts, death itself is personified as an enemy, and the adversary is cast as the ruler of a fallen world. But when you look strictly at the data of the scriptural text, the numbers don't change. The high body count remains heavily weighted on the side of divine judgment. It forces us to confront a much more complex, unvarnished portrait of the ancient Near Eastern concept of absolute justice.
This data perfectly aligns with broader comparative mythology. In the ancient world, from the Mesopotamian god era to the Vedic Shiva, the destructive aspect of the divine was never hidden. It was recognized as a necessary cosmic function to prune the human population, cleanse corruption, and maintain the structural integrity of the universe. Death was not viewed as a moral failure of the deity, but as an expression of absolute law. When modern readers are shocked by the biblical kill count, they are projecting a sentimental, homogenized view of the divine onto a raw Bronze Age text. The ancient writers were comfortable with a deity who stated explicitly in Isaiah 45:7, "I form the light, and create darkness. I make peace, and create evil. I the Lord do all these things." The ledger is a direct consequence of this uncompromised monotheistic worldview.
Ancient Near Eastern stone steles, like the Moabite stone, frequently record military massacres as direct commands from regional gods like Chemosh, proving that the concept of holy war and divinely sanctioned casualties was universal across ancient Semitic cultures. The biblical narrative shares this macro-historical context, logging every victory, defeat, and plague as a direct transaction between the sovereign power and the nation. As we close out this data-driven scriptural audit, we want to encourage our audience to verify these numbers independently. You can trace every single tally yourself by picking up a biblical concordance or checking forensic scriptural breakdowns, like Steve Wells' comprehensive demographic studies. When you go through the text verse by verse, from the plagues of Egypt to the angelic interventions, the empirical reality stands clear. Understanding this data doesn't require spiritual or theological alignment. It simply requires literacy and a willingness to see the text exactly as it was written. Stripping away centuries of folklore allows us to appreciate the raw, unfiltered gravity of ancient literature and the complex ways our ancestors attempted to map the brutal forces of life, death, and cosmic accountability onto the historical record.
A vital conclusion, Clara. Let us leave our audience with this final philosophical perspective. The scriptural ledger serves as a timeless warning about the nature of absolute power. Why do these ancient logs matter today? Because as modern civilization develops near infinite kinetic capabilities through automation and raw energy, we are stepping into the shoes of the ancient gods. We are creating systems capable of mass erasure. If our technological capacity for destruction expands without an equal expansion of moral constraint and deep historical wisdom, we will inevitably recreate the mass casualties of the ancient texts through our own hubris. The ledgers of the past are mirrors of our potential future. Govern your expanding collective power with profound humility, unyielding reverence, and total commitment to cosmic equilibrium.
Beautifully spoken, Ramanuja. True maturity requires facing the data of our history with absolute honesty. That wraps up episode 410 of our forensic deep dive into the scriptural ledger of life and death. Thank you for tuning into the Sanctuary Studio, everyone. We hope this analytical breakdown challenges your perspectives and inspires you to read these ancient texts with fresh objective eyes. If you valued this data-driven scriptural audit, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Share this broadcast with a fellow thinker, and drop your analytical thoughts in the comments below. How do you interpret the textual asymmetry of the ledger? Let us know. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and remember, the numbers never lie. We'll see you all in the very next episode.